Can you imagine getting into your dream American university? You have the admission letter, you have your I-20, your family has paid the deposits, flights have been planned, your bags are almost ready, and then you cannot get a visa appointment. According to the reports, 30 US senators have intervened over delays and bottlenecks affecting international student visa processing ahead of fall 2026 academic term. Well, the concern is particularly important for students from India because the student visa is not simply about entering America. It is the first step in a much longer pipeline. F1, then education, then OPT. Now, for STEM graduates, potentially STEM OPT, then perhaps the H1B lottery, and eventually for some, the green card process. So, when the first step is delayed, the entire pipeline it can move. A student who cannot reach campus on time may have to request a late arrival. Some students may have to consider deferring admission. Families may have already spent maybe money on deposits, accommodation and travel. And yes, there is another issue highlighted in the report: enhanced vetting. That means more background checks, more scrutiny, more time spent reviewing the application. Well, that can create a bottleneck when demand is already high. Well, the Senate intervention described in the report, it calls for greater transparency and stronger, prioritization of student visa processing. And yes, there is a bigger question here. America needs international students. American universities benefit from them. US communities benefit from their spending. And many of those students eventually become part of US technology workforce. So, if the student pipeline slows, the tech pipeline rather, it can slow with it. Well, this is one of the most controversial stories in the entire lineup tonight. According to the reports, DHS has described procurement plans involving electroshock enforcement devices for the IC officers. The report refers to a device called the glove, described as a wearable conductive device intended for the law enforcement use. So the important point for our discussion is not to sensationalize the technical term here. The important point is this: immigration enforcement is becoming more visible, more optional and more contested. ICE has two major enforcement components mentioned in the report: enforcement and removal operations, or ERO, and Homeland Security Investigations, or HSI. These agencies deal with immigration enforcement, investigations, workplace-related cases, and other federal matters. For immigrants and non-citizens, any interaction with immigration authority, it can be stressful, specifically for people who are not completely comfortable with English, specifically for elderly family members, specifically for people who panic during a sudden encounter. And that is why knowing your legal right, it matters. According to the reports, remaining calm, in fact, avoiding any physical confrontation, asking about legal authorities, keeping documentation of lawful status, and having access to qualified legal assistance, that matters. Now let's talk about the controversial part. Why do you need an electric glove for an illegal immigrant? Well, maybe you can put them in a detention center. Maybe you can deport them. Maybe that illegal immigrant is not perhaps the illegal immigrant that you are thinking about. Maybe he is an H1B worker whose visa just expired and he is waiting for a renewal. Maybe that illegal immigrant is a family member who fell out of status and waiting for a B1 or B2 visitor visa or a tourist visa. Well, using an electrical glove to shock the illegal immigrant, it is not something that is in favor of anybody in the United States. And yes, the broader message is worth remembering here. Do not turn an immigration encounter into a confrontation because the measures are going inhumane. Stay calm, do not physically resist, do not guess, and if you need legal advice, speak to a qualified immigration lawyer. Because when enforcement becomes stricter, understanding your rights become more important than ever.